Wow, it's quiet. That's because it's a few seconds before.
Yeah. I thought we were supposed to do that.
What a cooperative group we have.
That clock is off.
That light went on, so must be set.
Yeah, at least our concerns about the on-air light have been.
Oh, yeah. It's open mic.
All right, we're starting on Peterborough
Acting
time.
better than ever.
Gosh,
Look
there's
at that.
really an on it.
We'll call the meeting to order. I'll begin by introducing the members of the Budget Committee. Sitting in the cheap seats, you say? All right. We have Mandy Sliver on the right-hand side, as we know. And Lambert sitting on the other side. Down here we have Jim Long. Next to him is Al Lenos, Ronnie McIntyre. I'm Carl Mazzino. And this is Rick Lesser.
And we have Donnie Park.
Oh, I didn't see Donnie. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's a disguise.
Donnie's sitting in the back. He has a mask on. It's not all that clear to tell. So we'll open the meeting, and Nicole, would you like to present the first speakers?
Sure, so first
Excuse
up.
me, should I introduce, or have them introduce the select board, because you didn't have a meeting today, right?
No,
So we're anonymous.
So, with us from the select board, we also have Carla Ward, Bill Kennedy, and Bill Taylor. And taking minutes is Ally Kreutz.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No applause after that one.
You could also say behind the scenes, and from remote is Tim Brezovic, who's running our cable station. First up, Danica Malone will cover the planning and building budgets.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I trust that you guys all have copies of the expenditure and revenue budgets in front of you. So at the very top of the expenditure budget, you see that it starts with Heritage Commission. I'm going to skip that and start with planning and building administration, and then I'll loop back, just to kind of keep it all concise and clear. So planning and building administration consists of, right now, 3 full-time people. That is myself. We have Tim Hurley here, Code Enforcement Officer. He also serves as the zoning administrator as well as the Assistant Chief Health Officer. And then we have Laura Norton, who's our administrative assistant, and she does everything from XYZ, mainly taking minutes, so you'll see here at most of our meetings. There is an additional bump up, about $20,000 in this salary line, so that we can eventually hire someone either part-time or as an intern this coming year. In years past, this department has usually been 4 full-time people, so we have been a little bit understaffed, so we're looking to bring someone in again to kind of round us out. Continuing down that same column, we've adjusted the numbers just a little bit to meet some things that are a bit out of our control, such as retirement, payroll taxes. The one thing that's been bumped up just a little bit is the overtime. Overtime is something that both Tim and Laura get. They are hourly, I am salaried. This is something that's kind of an incentive to them because we do need someone in the Office of Planning and Building 40 hours a week. We're open usually 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. We do have walk-ins. So this is an incentive for them to be able to come to meetings after hours, especially when we have things come up last minute like zoning proposals, and we decide, oh, it'd be really great to have Tim Hurley here to speak to these zoning proposals. Continuing down to planning and building and operations, starting right at the top, you'll see a decrease from 5,500 to 3,500. That is really based because last year we budgeted to purchase Tim Hurley a new laptop. So going forward, we do not expect that we would need that full amount. So that's the explanation for that key reduction. Then we're going down 2 more lines. You'll see quite a big jump from 32.9 to 10.9. So in years past, the services line item has historically been a line item used to bring all sorts of services. That could be printing for outreach events. It could be bringing in a consultant or a facilitator for different types of meetings. We've never, ever really reached that full threshold of 32.9. Last year, in fact, we didn't even reach 5 digits. We'd like to keep it in there so that if we ever did need to bring in a consultant or a facilitator, we do have the means to, but certainly don't need the full threshold of 32.9. So then going down again to computer services. In the past year, last year, we did budget to pay for some additional subscription services. That is a one-time subscription service, so therefore we dropped it back down to about $2,200. We keep going down all the way to dues and publications. We bumped that up a little bit to accommodate all of our dues and publications that we pay for. Primarily, there are dues that I pay for American Planning Association, New Hampshire Municipal Association, Southwest Regional Planning Commission, and Tim Hurley has dues as well. For instance, the New England Building Officials Association is an organization that he participates in. And the publications that we purchase annually, for instance, if anyone is familiar, we have, we call it the Good Book. That is the all of the RSAs for planning and building, and we get an annual update every single year, so we do purchase that annually. As does Tim for building code changes, and he also has, every 3 years, he does quite a big purchase for the newest building code that's published. Under advertising, that's primarily for Monadnock Ledger Transcript. All of our meetings, majority of our meetings have to be noticed to the paper. The Ledger Transcript has gone up in cost steadily over the past, I'd say, well, for a very long time, they continue to increase in cost. So this cost has increased to accommodate that change over time. Down to mileage, we've really never needed quite too much money for mileage, especially in the years of COVID. We really haven't traveled all that much, so we've decreased it by half.
Is Tim's charges, now mileage charges primarily Tim's?
Yep, they have been Tim's the past 2 years. I haven't traveled anywhere for any conferences because they've been all remote. Laura doesn't usually travel for any workshops or meetings, so it's really been Tim. He does have mileage charged for his code car under a different item in here that I'll talk about.
So not all of his charges are appearing in this line item?
Well,
His
for
regular daily travel does
No,
not.
Yes.
this is for, like, special events, he's got a company car
Yep,
that's billed out.
and I'll explain that all in a moment, actually. I think that's the next one.
But you have accounted for charges in addition to like the 30%
Yes.
increase?
Correct, yep. So then if we flip that page, so that is Tim Hurley, he's code car, so who, for those who aren't familiar, our code enforcement officer gets one of their retired police cars every so often. The last one we just got was 2 years ago. We will hold on to that for as long as we possibly can. So he drives around an unmarked police car that says code enforcement officer on the side, and so this little budget right here is to accommodate supplies, repair and maintenance, and his gas charges. So in terms of mileage, what I'm talking about is he can charge all of the gas to this code. We've decreased it a bit, mainly because he's not needed to be driving as much. Oftentimes, if he's accommodating inspections that are early morning or in the evening, he's taking his own car on his way through. So we've accommodated that there. Going down to the next one for economic development. The biggest change that you see is that big scary number under services. So if we can hold on, I'm going to loop back to that once we get to revenue because that'll help to explain it a lot more, but we'll come back to that. Under staff development, we're asking for $300. Staff development is something new to this budget for the past couple of years. It allows the people who are on the EDA to go to workshops, trainings as necessary if they find something that's of particular value to them. The next one down is community and economic development. For those who remember, we had Karen Hatcher here in years past, and this budget was primarily for her work. Because she's no longer with us, obviously the numbers are all zero. Most of that work has been reabsorbed by my office, and my line items will cover the cost of the work that she was doing. So then flipping to the next page. So on this page, you see two different conservation commissions. The first one at the top, we're proposing to essentially eliminate, it's just a duplication. The bottom one, though, is the primary one that we're working with. And so if you're looking at that, the top number on there is $3,500 for services. That is to accommodate the overseeing and management and maintenance of our conservation lands. We work with our Conservation Commission volunteers, particularly there's usually one or two, that will go out into our conservation lands. They have easement books, and they will review to make sure that we are meeting the criteria of the deed agreement. For instance, if the trails are going to be maintained, if it's going to be mowed, things of that nature. And then the other big change that you see there is $500 for public education and programs. I believe in the past year, there was a lot of optimism that COVID would die down enough that we could do a lot more public education, and it really did not come down to that. So we'd like to leave a number in there so that hopefully this year we can move forward with some public education projects.
Excuse me, we don't see $500?
That's
Am I missed?
Conservation Commission, second Conservation Commission on the far right.
New budgets were sent out last week.
Oh, I don't have it. Okay, sorry.
Yes.
500, so, yes, $500 for public education programs, and then the previous number of years past was $1325, if that matches up for you.
Sorry, Danica, I might be looking at an older one now.
Sure.
The services line, currently, how much now?
Services for Conservation Commission is $3,500.
And why is that so much higher than you were saying?
Yeah, so originally, the Conservation Commission was charging to their land acquisition and management fund. It is cleaner and makes more sense to have a budget right here under services so that when they come to us with a bill saying we had our volunteer go out, they spent all this time and effort looking at their land like they always do for the past couple of decades, we can pay them out of a services line item as opposed to the land acquisition and management. Yeah.
Why are you calling them volunteers then, if we're paying them?
Well, they're volunteers on the Conservation Commission. However, the two that we usually work with do have backgrounds in Conservation Commission stewardship. So the one that we work with particularly right now, Robert Wood, does invoice us, and we've done that with them for the past 3 decades probably.
Where is the mowing of, let's say, off Cheney Avenue there?
Yep.
That sort of thing. Is that in this line as well?
It's not in this one. That is in the land acquisition and management fund. So when we get revenue or charge for that, that will go into that line item. And that
It's not budgeted.
is not, yes, it's not budgeted. Yep.
It's a wash.
Are you proposing we stop mowing that field?
I thought the Stan Price crowd would take care of that.
All right, so then let's flip all the way back to the front. And then you have Heritage Commission, and that's another one of the boards that we work with. Their numbers really aren't changing much at all. They ask for $500 for supplies, and that's typically for things of, if they're gonna be working on a walking tour. They haven't used it in the past year, mainly because of, again, COVID. This year, they're looking at doing some other projects, and they're asking, again, $500 for services. That's often used to pay for their dues and subscriptions, as well as any services they need, such as framing or historical, cultural references from other professionals. Any questions on that, except for that one item under EDA that I'll go back to? So moving on to revenue.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
So, just to clarify, we should be looking at the updated on January 20th version of this, correct?
Correct,
So
yeah.
if anybody has a laptop and is looking, this was sent out on, I believe, the 21st. Right from yeah, just down there. Thank you.
Okay. So a lot of the revenue that we have in this budget line is kind of like looking in a crystal ball a little bit. What we anticipate that will come through as building permits, subdivision applications, and so forth. For building permits, we did fantastic this past year. COVID was a really great time for people to look around their house and find little projects to do. And so looking forward for this coming year, we do expect to see an increase in building permits being pulled. We're aware of a couple big projects that are coming online. So that is why we've increased it to about 50,000.
Do you know what it was in the past year?
In the past year,
You said it was-
48,000.
You said it was up.
48,000.
Thank you.
Yep. Going down the line there to subdivision and lot line adjustments. In the past 3 years, we've seen a steady increase in how many subdivision and lot line adjustment applications that we've gotten. So we've increased that about double. In the past year, it came out to about $400, $400 in total. We're giving ourselves a little bit of a buffer because we expect that we'll have more based on what we've heard coming down the line. For ZBA applications, we usually do quite a bit more than 800, or I'm sorry, 500. So 800 is just about under the threshold of what we expect this coming year, knock on wood. But then again, it's a revenue, so that shouldn't be a huge issue. For site plan review, again, based on what we know is coming down the line for certain applications, we expect quite a significant increase. A big piece to this is the applications that we know that are coming forward. We'll have quite a lot of abutters, quite a long process. Site plan review applications typically have a design review application, a conceptual review application, and then the full-blown site plan review application. So for any big development with a site plan review application, there's a 3 permitting process for it, if that makes sense. So there's 3 different layers where they'll come before the board. Down to the next one under Mass Grant, probably 2 weeks ago now, the town of Peterborough was awarded a $30,000 grant from Monadnock Alliance for Sustainable Transportation. This money is going to be used to, and you probably remember Seth McLean talking about this a couple nights ago, to be used for some visioning and engineering work in the greater downtown TIF area. And that leads into the next numbers from the TIF districts where we are looking to pull some money from the downtown TIF in order to do that work this coming year. Now, the next 3 numbers all relate to the TIF district. So the sum of those 3, if you go back to the expenditure sheet, is the sum that's under the economic development for services, plus some additional for the services that the EDA uses, such as rack fees, printing of brochures. So there is the sum of that total plus the additional services that the EDA uses. Now, under revenue for greater downtown TIF, that $34,525, the $10,000 we request for staff support for the TIF district. We are requesting, in years past, they've voted to approve $20,000 specifically for this downtown visioning work. So we're asking for a refreshed vote on that just to ensure that we're in compliance. And then the remainder is actually for Seth McLean's tree program, where he brought an arborist in and they went through the town, inventoried the trees, and created a summary report of what maintenance they would need over time. And so that additional money is for trees that are specifically in the greater downtown TIF vicinity that they would pay for. For the West Peterborough TIF, for those who aren't familiar with our TIF districts, this TIF district is sunsetting, so to speak. They will be quote-unquote over with in 2025. So they don't have a lot of projects coming online, but we are asking for the $10,000 of staff support. And finally, for South Peterborough TIF district, again, like the other 2 TIF districts, we're asking for $10,000 of staff support. On top of that, we're asking for $1,300 of incidentals for outreach projects and rental fees. One of the things that happens throughout the year is we might need to put out an outreach event, say rent the PCC, to get your community feedback on a project. So that additional $1,300 would be incidentals for that, and any monies not used would go back into the TIF district. And that is it.
Am I wrong in saying that Seth presented that tree work in the downtown TIF as part of his budget, and it's being presented as part of your budget too? Is that twice?
It might be presented as part of mine under revenue, and he might have presented it as an expenditure being offset by revenue coming from me.
All right. But that isn't part of your budget as an expenditure either?
His tree services aren't a part of my expenditures.
Oh, okay. All right.
Tree services and engineering work.
Good enough for me.
Can I mention the fact that the EDA has not approved this budget? At this point, we were waiting for the various TIF advisories to give their blessing?
Yep, so there is the potential that there might be minor adjustments to this. We do have approval from one so far for these expenditures for the South Peterborough TIF. Greater Downtown TIF will be this Friday, and West Peterborough TIF will be next Monday.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Earlier this spring, a group of us met with Seth and West Peterborough at Texera Park because there's a lot of invasives along the river.
Yeah.
And we were thinking that could come out of the TIF. Is that something that would be budgeted, or do we make, and this was through the Parks Committee?
Yeah.
How does that work?
I would first ask Seth what his plan is with that tree program, because I'm not sure if he's set money aside for removal of invasives.
Okay.
But if not, it could potentially be something that comes out of the TIF plan, and we could talk to the West Peterborough TIF about taking some money to put aside for that.
Okay, I just didn't know if that had to be brought up in budget.
I'll talk to Seth about what's going on with this tree program, but if it does come out that it's something that we want to pull money from the West Peterborough TIF for that purpose, this coming Monday when I meet with West Peterborough TIF, if they want to amend it to accommodate that, we'll come back to this venue. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you for your question. If you haven't been introduced yet, would you introduce yourself when you...
I'm so
raise the
sorry,
question?
Carol Nelson.
Thank you.
Riveting stuff, I know.
That's it?
No further questions here?
Okay.
You're up.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
I anticipated all our questions.
That's great. Happy I could do that.
Thank you.
If I can just have 30 seconds to get set up real quick.
What page are we on?
Hey, Jay.
Massachusetts Alliance for Sustainable Transportation.
Better call an IT guy. Oh, here it goes.
I can pull out conference rooms to come look at projectors.
Yeah, you get a guy for this sort of stuff.
Yeah. Get used to it for a while. Is this the biggest department budget increase we've seen so far? My goal is
I am Bosch Farashai, Director of IT and GIS, Information Technology and Geographic Information System for the town. I have about a dozen slides, so I'm just talking about what the department does, and then also I'll mention the large increases in some of those budget items. If you don't mind, I'm going to stand up there so you're not doing the whole,
Has this number changed? This 563, has that changed? On the new report?
Ready?
I don't think so.
All right. In the IT GIS department, there are now 4 people, and this represents the large increase in salaries. There's 2 reasons for that. The one reason that's been stated every budget meeting that there's been a reallocation, the department budgets that I used to be charged out to multiple budgets because I've been here almost 20 years next month. Started in planning as an intern, kind of moved around, then got my own department. So essentially all the salaries that were charged out to multiple budgets have been brought to one salary item representing that large increase. And also the other is we recently added a 4th person to IT department. Of course, it's myself, RT specialist, Tim Brezovic. There's not really a title for that guy. He pretty much can do it all. Runs a TV station. Of course, network admin's Cole Royal. And then our newest person is Julie Elwell. This kind of came about organically because pre-COVID, we had a very successful internship program where I kind of went out and knew a lot of college professors just through my work. And I was able to recruit quality interns because they kind of did all the work for me. They brought me quality people, really successful. Advent of COVID, it dropped off. It was, we're having a hard time just hiring paid staff. Interns dried up, plus Keene State closed some programs we used to feed off. And Julie actually came from the geography department at Keene State back in 2019. That dried up over the last couple of years, come to us a couple times for special projects. So her role is really the GIS editing, because with our GIS, it's one of the more robust systems in the state. And of course, with any big system, you have to do a lot of maintenance. It takes a lot of time. So she handles most of that editing. She's also been helping us out with a lot of digital archiving. The town produces a lot of work, and the paper, we just don't have room for the paper, so we have a digital archive we've been maintaining for almost 20 years that has right now over 80,000 documents in it. So she's been helping administration out with that and other departments. She also lends support to the planning department. As Danica I mentioned about hiring a part-time person, Julie kind of fills some of those gaps, creating graphics or maps and other things for some of their outreach materials. And she also does some DPW support. I'll show you a couple examples on that. And that's part of the reason. With no interns coming in, Julie's also going to be our field person doing a lot of these projects with the utility division. Continuing on some of our mapping of inventories that I'll show and some other items. And Julie was invaluable. Pre-COVID, during COVID, we had a lot of right-to-know requests, and we only have a certain amount of time to respond to right-to-know requests. And whether people know it or not shouldn't really matter. It takes a lot of time by staff to find the documents, produce the documents, and they have to be reviewed. Julie did a lot of that work for us during the time. Yes, Tyler?
Is there any way to put a dollar amount on the cost of those right-to-know requests?
We never have, but I know myself, Nicole, Julie, and sometimes other department heads have to get involved,
It
so.
really depends on the request.
Yeah.
Some of them are very straightforward and they don't necessarily require specialized staff to get involved. Other requests have been gargantuan and have required multiple department directors to be involved, as well as attorney review before the documents can be released. So it really depends on what is being asked of the town.
And can you comment as to whether they've been found satisfying to the requesters?
It really depends. Oftentimes, yes, it's exactly what they're looking for. We've had a couple of instances where people have been frustrated by the amount of confidential information that has been redacted, because that is what they're hoping to get at. But we do complete every request that we receive.
And I should also mention, not just right-to-know requests, Tyler, also all the litigation the town's been involved in the last several years. Those are discovery. We have to go through a lot more documentation plus communication, and then somebody has to review it, make sure there's no confidential information being put out for discovery.
It's horrifying.
Well, I do want to thank you all for
Yeah.
working so hard to get all that information.
Yeah, and actually, like I said, Julie was kind of a lifesaver, because as we were going through COVID, with everything else going on in operations, we can't shut down, as has been said. Julie really helped us out. And also, Julie, I think a couple of you know this, she worked with us on the EV project. We need a lot of research done, a lot of review of all the documentation. As Seth said before, it's new to us. Like, I might be a technologist, but EV is a whole other ballgame. So she helped us out with some of the research on that as well. So
That's electric vehicle charging
yeah,
stations.
sorry, yeah. The one going at the new parking lot. So.
Excuse me, Fosh, I think the question from Tyler's significant for the budget. If we don't know how much it's costing us to respond to these things, maybe we ought to make an effort to write that up as it occurs, and then next year we can take a look at what that adds up to. It might also be good to see if over the years it's going up or down, or what it's doing. Yeah, Mandy.
Just to kind of and this is just a question, I apologize if it sounds elementary, but isn't it required by law for us to produce those?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's no
So
option.
is there really any benefit to knowing how much it costs? I mean, that's kind of like saying how much of Lily's time is spent doing the audit every year. It's.
Now, the significance is we have to know what to budget. It's not that we're going to say no, we just want to know what to put in the budget for the work.
We don't.
It's staff time.
It's staff time.
Yeah.
It's still money, right?
It is money, but, you couldn't separate the time in my salary, it doesn't cost you any more or any less depending on how many right-to-know requests I'm overseeing, the completion of. So it's still just, it's absorbed in my salary. Where you're really seeing it is impact is my ability to get other work done. And that does vary depending on the year. There's no schedule of right-to-know requests or demands, so.
And I apologize, I didn't mean that to be, I was just thinking from an administrative standpoint, adding one more thing for them to track when I don't know as if it would help us with the budget is all I meant by that, so sorry.
We don't know, but we're not hearing any estimate at all here.
I do have.
We might have part-time people helping with other things because we're being distracted from this.
I do have an estimate on one particular right-to-know request, because it was asked of me how much is going into it. That was a particularly expensive one, though, because it involved the police chief's time, one of his senior officers' time, as well as my time, and town attorney time. So that is an extreme one, but that was costing us approximately $600 an hour to complete.
How did you bill those hours, or how did you determine it was $600 an hour?
It was using the amount of the salary plus benefits, taxes paid on those salary, workers' comp, other things, the cost of the computer, the electricity that was being used, the hourly rate for our attorney was built into that. So there's a lot of components that went into that particular one. But it was a very expensive, particularly onerous right-to-know request that, as stated, we don't really have an option. We're required to fulfill them.
In that particular case, with the $600 per hour, what was the total bill for that particular case, would you say?
I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and try to figure out how much time we had ultimately put into that one.
But in the thousands?
It was probably in the thousands, yeah. Yeah.
Tens, 20 of thousands. That was astronomical.
It was
And
very expensive.
the horrifying part about that right-to-know specific one was how much work people weren't able to do that they're actually paid to do.
And that,
We had two high-ranking police officials not able to be doing their jobs because they were chasing after 15-year-old paperwork.
I think it would be useful to have even a informal estimate of how much this is costing so that we can get a better idea of what the burden is on the budget.
I mean, if the board wants us to, we could certainly start tracking that into, going forward.
I'm not sure how we decide, but I think we can take it up when we make our recommendations at the end.
What we'd like to add in that particular case, the information that was gained, or the knowledge that was gained from all of that was valuable information, and it was not for naught. So it wasn't wasted time at all. And I don't know, but it just, I really asked the question to point out, if anybody is ever watching or listening to these things, that our town staff is really stretched, and you guys are filling your duties and doing other things on top of that. And, we're as a board, we're constantly asked questions. I'll be kind about this. We're asked questions about why the taxes are so high. And we have to try and justify that to our constituents, obviously, but I don't think people understand how much your salary doesn't line item all the things that you're doing. You're stretched in every direction. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm glad you brought it up and put it in the list of things, because these are things that just get overlooked and people don't think when they're making a request like that, what may go into it, the amount of staff involved in town. So that was the big thing.
And also keep in mind, I also mentioned litigation, which I wasn't tracking time, but
Right.
litigation, as Nicole said, we don't have a choice in these things. We have a time limit. So we literally have to drop what we're doing to fulfill these, because that's our obligation.
Right.
And, one of those litigations in particular was where Julie really shone through as being incredibly valuable to us, because she was able to go through, find all of the documents for this particular property, go back decades, scan them all in, digitize them, organize them, and made it much, much easier for us to do our review. She really did a fantastic job.
If it's difficult to quantify in dollars and cents, everybody's time, can you quantify Julie's percentage of time? Is that 20% of her job, 50% of her job?
Honestly, she started full-time November 1st, so it hasn't come up in the last couple months, and she was hourly and part-time temporary, we probably have a good guess of how much time she spent on originally requesting those or filling these requests.
Because I'm just thinking, you know, does these right-to-know requests at some point need to lead to, you know, one person full-time?
We've talked about that.
Yeah.
The only catch is, I don't know, is there's multiple skills involved.
Yeah.
You know, like, it comes down to Nicole actually looking at it for confidential, that's the last step, but in between steps, is that relevant? Is that a, you know, legal document, is that something else? Is it, you know, it gets complicated. I mean, we could probably quantify our hours because honestly, we brought it back for like specific, some of this stuff and a couple other projects. And she just, like I said, shined through and invaluable, especially the stuff we were dealing with the last couple of years.
And one thing about that right to know, it's all gonna depend on what the question is. What the question is, maybe he can answer, but somebody else, it may be somebody else's skill set to deal with it. So you can't say, oh, this person is this percentage. It's what skill set does each employee in the town hall have that will contribute to answering that specific question.
Are these all like legitimate requests, or?
It doesn't matter, it's right to know.
Wow.
That's a matter of opinion.
It
Yeah,
could be,
that's not our call.
Are there categories of right to know? In other words, some fit into crime, maybe, I'm just making that up, but are there any categories that you could say, gee, we get most of ours from, in this particular vein, or this particular area, land, whatever, land issues?
No, they've
I don't think so.
been all over the place.
They've been everywhere, yeah.
Fosh, you had mentioned, Carol Nelson again, you had mentioned that there's a deadline.
Yes.
So are you saying when a right, and I'm sorry that we're really focusing on this right now, but when you get a request, you have to respond within 2 weeks?
We have 5 days to respond, not necessarily come up with all the documents, but we have to respond in 5 days, within a 5-day period. And then Nicole kind of works with the requester and on the timing. Sometimes it's a gargantuan task and we need to go back into paper records and look at, so we might tell them 2 weeks before we have anything for you, or it might be longer.
Okay.
But we have 5 days to respond.
To respond and just say, we've got your request, we're working on it?
Yes.
Okay, and how many do you average per year?
Honestly, Carol, the last 3 years have blended together for me. I have no idea how many. To tell you the truth, I have no idea how many we've fulfilled.
Do we document somewhere the right to know?
Well, so the ones that I work on, I do have files, you know, so I could tell you exactly how many I've worked on, but, you know, some of the right to know requests are so simple and basic, we don't even really, you know, it's like, you know, the tax collector, for instance, will receive one and she'll just grab the file and send it to them, and it's that simple. And I won't even hear about it because it's just a regular, you know, of course, for regular duties. Same with, you know, assessing, that sort of thing. Others are, you know, bigger, and so they'll end up on my desk because they're complicated. They involve, you know, some legal matter or some human resources matter, or they'll end up in the police department because they involve a criminal matter. So it really just depends.
Would it be easy enough for you to provide the ones that you had to deal with over the last year, just to give us a better
Sure.
sense of what they are?
Yeah,
Is that easy to do?
Yep.
That in and of itself is a right to know request.
You have to put it right into the-
$600 an hour.
Speaking of you using up too much time.
No, I couch that if it was easy for you. You can define easy as a good one.
Good conversation, didn't expect it, but what was I at? Also, Julie is housed in IT, but she's not direct IT help desk like myself, Tim, and Cole will handle help desk requests, you know, troubleshooting computers, but her role is not that. It is really for the data and archiving, just that piece of it. She's housed in IT primarily because we can give her access to everything she needs to compile it. That's just, you know, part of the way it goes. So.
Did your department play any role in unraveling the fraud that took place?
Yes.
Reporting about it, or?
Yes, I can talk about that a little bit and you guys can ask questions. I was directly involved with the investigators on that, yes. I'll mention that in some of the slides where you can ask questions and answer them.
Bosh, one final question.
Yes.
It just occurs to me to ask, going back to your salary line, what portion of that accounts for Jillian or the new hire?
Julie, Julie is, I don't know the exact numbers, like,
Yeah, don't forget, part of that increase, I covered it at the very beginning, there's a lot of Fosh's salary getting moved over because
Yeah,
it's still
right.
been in planning for a long time.
But I guess what I'm asking is, what does she add to the salary line?
Not much.
Or you can't-
I don't have the exact number, but the majority of the change here is because most of Fosh and half of Tim Brezovic
Right,
were
right,
not.
I realize that. But what
Absolutely.
I'm asking is, what is the differential for the new hire?
We'll break that out and get that
Yeah.
to you.
She just went from part-time to full-time also, right, so.
yeah,
Not huge.
no, and she's cheap compared to the rest of us.
Anyhow,
All right.
hopefully she's not watching.
She is, but you know, she knows.
Value is the way to say it, not she.
Yes.
Sorry, you're right, she is actually a great value. If you're listening, Julie, you're awesome. It's been a tremendous help to not just IT, but multiple departments. That's kind of how she got the job, is just, she proved herself. So, start with PEG real quick, this is the easiest one. No really changes here. As far as last year's budget, the last thing we did was the upgrade of broadcast equipment right in the middle of COVID in 2020. We had a new equipment for the broadcast gear, some of the streaming services, but we have no planned major items or changes for next year. Yes?
Gosh, Channel 22, when I do try to watch from home, is often very difficult to hear, or there's no sound at all.
The no sound we figured out.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
that, we fixed that soon. I heard about it when you mentioned it someplace.
Yeah,
We fixed that.
Okay.
The channel, unfortunately, Carol, is not up to us and the crew.
okay.
We are part of Comcast.
But do we pay for that service?
No, they actually pay us.
They're-
Part of the franchise fees is we receive franchise fees from all cable TV subscriptions. So this is solely funded, the PEG budget, solely funded by cable TV Comcast franchise fees in the town of Peterborough.
I'm glad we don't pay for it because it's terrible.
No, the channel, and to be honest, the channel has always been,
Sketchy.
it's not, unfortunately, our control.
Gotcha.
And actually-
They probably aren't watching.
22 either.
No, I mean, we tell people to watch the stream.
They're gonna waste any more money than they have to on it.
Yeah, yeah.
Good point.
And they're mandated by federal law to provide it to us.
Gotcha. I mean, I turn it on and Karen's talking. You know, it's like, how old is this video?
We need to fix that.
And we'll work on the channel. We have a hard time getting content. We've begged people for years, and just hard time getting content for the channel. I mean, we've done some wrangling to get other content, but it's the same stuff over and over. So we get it. This is the budget. Like I said, no major changes. We don't plan anything for next year. Essentially, what we do with this money is pay for the streaming services, our monthly fees, also archiving select board meetings, budget meetings, you know, and anything breaks as far as equipment, we'll pay for it out here. But again, no major changes or items next year. Cal?
Angela, you just mentioned archiving meetings. Are planning board meetings going to now be also streamed and?
They are being streamed.
Yeah.
We don't archive them per se.
Is there a
because-
reason why we wouldn't?
I guess I need a clearer policy, because if they say we need to keep these forever, then the town is going to have an issue in 10 years maintaining that. And you can't do it on YouTube, because we don't trust YouTube to keep our videos. So we would have to do it on our own platform, just like we do for the budget and select board meetings. I know there's no policy, but we do keep those. You know, that's kind of my issue with that. If they say forever, forever means forever. So the town has to plan to keep all those videos forever.
Okay, so there's an option to sunset it after 30 days?
That's what I would prefer, is a sunset after a few years. Because remember, the official record is the minutes themselves and not the videos.
But each board has to develop their own policy, so.
Yeah.
Right.
The selectmen developed the policy for the PEG station years ago when it was first established, so.
So, yeah, get copy.
Because that was brought up at the planning board meeting.
Mhm.
And again, that group has to make the decision, but why, you don't trust YouTube?
No, they will, unless you, I don't trust them to keep it forever, Carol.
Oh, I
Like,
see.
we have our own platform that we control, we pay for.
The Ustream?
Yes.
Okay,
It's actually IBM Video, we just keep the Ustream tag, but
yeah,
we pay for that, we manage it.
okay.
So we'll trust that because we're in control of it. We're not in control of the YouTube I don't know if you guys know, Google will do things and not really tell you.
Right.
Or they'll say, we're going to disable the service. Sorry, after a month, you're done.
I just
So.
didn't know if on Ustream, if there was a data maximum, like.
There is, but we can upgrade. That's what I'm saying. Like, if the town chooses to keep these videos forever, 10 years, 20 years, when I'm gone, they have to keep it forever. So anytime you change the platform, you have to migrate terabytes of videos.
Right.
And that's where people need to think about it. Do you really want to keep it forever, or do you want to keep it for a number of years and then let it go bye-bye? So, it's not an easy answer, just something the town needs to be aware of. Any questions on the PEG? Pretty straightforward. Franchise fees funded. No major expenditures in '23. As far as we get into the GIS portion, I know some of you have seen the slide before. The way the town does asset management, meaning utilities stuff, buildings and all that, is through GIS or geocentric utilities. I know Seth mentioned a couple of these at his presentation. The road maintenance program that he's been using the last several years was all GIS kind of based. Of course, it is not GIS-centric, but it started that way. Now it's really Seth and somebody else kind of rating the roads, updating the budget banding and all that stuff. But we also have numerous inspection apps that Nate Brown and his utilities crews use, from gate valve and exercise inspections to hydrant inspection apps, and a backflow preventive app, which we brought in-house about 3 or 4 years ago, and I've been told it saves the town $50,000 a year, but not using the contracted services. Those are all apps that we've developed over the years for the utility guys. Basic goals, of course, budget through lifecycle management, setting priorities, and then, ultimately we try to be proactive versus, reactive, and business continuity. Part of it is out of sight, out of mind, because in the old days of paper, somebody left, you had to go find all the papers they disheveled. Now, with the digital platform, everything's there, whether we get a new public works director, new town administrator, a new IT guy, all the systems already have everything in place. So that's part of our goals. Some recent initiatives, stormwater inventory management. This is something we're using interns for, to go out in the field, collect catch basins, drainage lines, do some inspections. And this is where Julie has helped out when she started as an intern 3 years ago. We'll continue to do this work with our field guys, coming field seasons. Another initiative recently is, again, business continuity, out of sight, out of mind. We've put kind of a capital projects layer into our utilities app. I know you guys have talked about this, so my idea is I just want to have kind of a dashboard of projects. This necessarily is not going to have every little detail, but at least we can see kind of trends over time, how many years out we have projects going on, the cost, and so on. So we kind of started this past year. It's kind of like, I call it a pilot, but this is kind of how we're moving. So that way, Seth, Nicole, whoever can see how many projects we have going on and what year they're supposed to be done or funded and so on.
Josh, would that be available to the public?
No, this utility app specifically is only,
That'd have to be a right to know request.
Is there a zoning app, if you will, or change?
there's not a zoning app, but in our parcel bureau, which is public, there is zoning layers and other layers that any property owner or taxpayer would want to see.
Are you having any initiatives there to make any changes? Are you planning any changes?
Not on the parcel viewer. The parcel viewer is one of those things, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Has all the assessment stuff in there, property information, again, other layers like zoning, and some other zoning overlay things that we can actually map.
But the proposed changes that are maybe coming up can be incorporated in that system. There's no new work.
Oh, the zoning
getting
stuff?
done.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we do
Can
an
be
update every year, yes.
incorporated.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah. But this side is not public, only for our guys and our contractors. So. And of course, this has been talked about more than I thought it would be, but the park tree inventory, or maintenance program, Seth brought us the arborist report. What he wanted us to do is kind of put it into a database, visualize it, because it's a multi-year project, and he just didn't want it to fly by the wayside because people aren't thinking about it. So actually, Julie did most of this work. She went out and tried to find the trees, map them out, and tag them with their the numbers. And I'm told the numbers are referenced in the arborist plan. That's what the reference here. And then other places that didn't have an ID number, we gave it just for tracking purposes.
Are those numbers on the trees themselves?
It's on like the arborist plan, I asked Julie about it like earlier, because some of them had numbers. Actually, this came up in our discussion earlier today. Some of them have like the clump of trees tagged with like an ID number. She told me in Putnam Park especially. And the other ones, she just kind of made up an ID just for tracking purposes. So, because they're not just talking about treatment of one tree, this might be a grouping of trees that they're going to treat for that particular year. So,
For a little project, it sure gets an awful lot of airtime.
right? Like I said, I didn't expect that much attention. It was kind of just one of these things we did, you know, and just for, again, tracking purposes. Some of the benefits, I know a lot of you have seen this slide over and over. Cost savings and cost avoidance. Since the system started 20 plus years ago, we learned quickly, with the quality mapping we have, we can start any engineering project, preliminary design, right out of the way without sending any field crews out, without spending that $10,000 just to get a preliminary design. We've used it for almost every project the town's done for the last 20 years, including the ones coming up for the fire station, public works renovation. And the numbers we get from engineers is 5 to 10,000 savings every time. And that's just having the quality mapping and topo. And of course, with the computerized systems, the easy reproduction, publication, distribution of maps, you know, I've sent probably half of you in this room a map at one point or another in my career. Easy field access. This was kind of a kicker for the utility guys. Before it was like paper. They were literally go find that 1967 plan. And so what we just started doing a long time ago was this little screenshot of their app. We put all their paper stuff, the authoritative stuff they care about, into the app. So it's not just trusting my GIS is right. It's literally for them pulling up their actual sketches they drew or as-built. This has been invaluable to the guys, especially on those water main breaks at 3 in the morning, because, you know, with the snow cover, they'll never find it unless it's properly mapped. So this has proven its worth. The guys rely on it. They have to. And of course, as mentioned, the asset management life cycles. And the GIS is very helpful for grant applications. We've been successful, not just because of GIS, but it's been a big component of data and showing whatever we're applying for, what we have, and what we're trying to accomplish. And of course, the big one is common operational picture, because this dashboard, even though it's not public, is available to Seth, all the utilities, superintendents, Nicole, myself, Chief Walker, whoever else needs it, you know, as far as seeing what's going on the ground. Select board.
We're out.
So that's the GIS portion. As far as IT assets, we have about 77 desktops. I think it's gone up a little bit. We did buy a few desktops recently. Laptops about 30. 30 iPhones, 14 different iPads, 28 network switches, which is kind of a vague term now. Network gear does so much more. And then 10 firewalls for security. So that's their basic hardware. I don't know if you can see it, but I didn't realize when I put these screenshots or help desk in. This is actually a nice snippet of the kind of help desk requests we get. They go from anywhere from one of the terminals and the police cruisers isn't working to ghost ringing on the phone. So we get the whole gamut.
Squeaky printer, yeah.
Yeah, squeaky. Yeah, I was kind of laughing when I did the screenshots. I was like, oh, look at that.
It's the library, it can't squeak, so.
Yeah. So. Good smattering of what requests we get. New for calendar year 2021-2022, multi-factor authentication. This is in direct kind of response to the business email compromise, which is part of the fraud. Where, you know, this will mitigate part of that fraud at least. Would it prevented it? I'm not sure. There are so many other pieces to that, but it will help mitigate the breach of email. We've rolled it out to our high-value targets. We've also started a formal and required cyber awareness training and verification. Some of you might know, back in the fall, we shut down the town, did a required cyber training that anybody who was working and attended. If they didn't attend, they had to watch the recording, sign off on the verification, and that went in their personnel records. That was a new thing to the town. I've been here almost 20 years, as I mentioned. I've always done informal trainings. I did lunch and learns. I do, hey, Tech Tuesday, check out this. Like, I try to just get everybody just aware. A lot of stuff goes on in the world, even though we're in Southwest New Hampshire in our little bubble. A lot of stuff goes on, so I try to just, you know, let them know. Some people are like, I can't believe people do that. The world's a crazy place, and it's not getting better. Of course, during COVID, municipalities became a huge target. And I've always said, if you get targeted, it's really hard to defend. all municipalities in New Hampshire were targeted. Ours just happened to be the most publicly breached, discussed. But yeah, so that's a formal program. As far as FY23, with some of the other large increases in the IT budget. Actually, I'm going to reveal now. So, software licensing part of this is a formal or continued phishing testing and ongoing cyber training. We recently signed up for KnowBe4. Some of you might be aware of that. It's kind of a training platform for testing your employees for phishing and other social engineering ways. And I'll reveal it tonight. We actually unleashed the campaign, the first one yesterday morning on our staff. My phone blew up. My email's blown up. I had to pull out my theater skills to act, oh, that looks like phishing maybe, I don't know. But that's how we're continuing on. Instead of doing like what we did in the fall where we sat everybody down with our partners at Primex, instead of doing that every year and just having them sign a form they watch the video, this is actively training our staff, testing their phishing, meaning are they clicking on it? If they're clicking on it, why? But also if they click on something, it's not like, oh, we're gonna discipline you. It's, hey, you clicked on a link that probably was suspect. Here's a 2-minute video on maybe why you shouldn't have clicked on it. And this platform also gives me a ton of metrics. I know when they clicked on it, when they received it, how many times they clicked on it. Sorry, I have to crack up. So I'm sure I have a few people out in the world begroaning me like, really, Fosh? Yes, I started that yesterday morning, and it was very eye-opening. Nicole and I will sit down and digest the reporting. It's still going on right now. So we'll figure out, some of it, none of it is surprising, but we know now where we need to improve. And again, my premise is not here to discipline the staff. My premise is to make them aware of what's going on. I used to get called paranoid forever.
Well, it really helped us, I think, even just the preliminary results we were seeing were showing not just, where there were issues that we needed to really address, but also where the successes were.
Yes.
People who certainly were aware. Some of the comments that I heard, because obviously I wasn't on it too, were, I thought it was, it came from you or it came from somebody else, but then when I looked at the email address, it was wrong.
Yeah.
There's something weird about it, so that's what tipped me off, which is great, so that there is that awareness within the staff, and we were able to see that some of the work we've been doing over the last few months has really been very successful.
No, I guess some other tidbits we know. Also, we need to work on how people report stuff and where to report it, because not everybody knows,
Is that only emails? Do you also do texts?
I can do a bunch of stuff. Any social engineering tactic, I have access to it.
But right now it's just email?
We just literally started, and nobody actually knows about this. Nicole and I just let it out of the bag.
Okay.
Like, we kept it between me and her and my crew, because we want to get a baseline.
Well, don't give up all your tricks tonight in this meeting. Keep trying to trick people.
I mean, I can tell you all day, Bill, but this platform is very slick, and again, it gives me great metrics on what's going on.
Haven't you done this in the past? I know when I was town clerk, you used to tell us not to open emails.
Well, that was me just telling you, but this is
Years
actually a formal, like,
Meeting.
yeah, it's not, well, baiting.
It is bad.
It is somewhat baiting, but
That's how you fish.
I mean, that's the thing, it's real world stuff. Like the emails, some of the emails I sent part of my campaign, I was cracking up because it's something I would write. And that's the thing with this platform. My budget liaison, Rich Clark, he's very familiar with this. He's like, oh yeah, you got to do that. Because, and this platform isn't that expensive. Actually, it's cheap money compared to the rest of the stuff I'm about to talk about. But we're gonna see how it works. But again, it also ongoing cyber training. Plus, it's metrics. It's not again somebody signing the form, they watch the video. It's active, and I can do not just phishing email. I can do voicemail. I can do all kinds of stuff. So, yeah, very robust.
Great.
Is this in the budget in the capital outlay, or?
No,
where
this is going to be in the
budget?
software licensing 61402. And this item is only I budgeted $2,500 for it.
Oh, so
That's actually
it's not bad.
dirt cheap for the use of
Gosh,
this.
nobody has account codes on their
Yeah, it's
documents.
GIS.
Oh,
So
sorry.
it's in the IT. It's in the
You're the
first
only one who's
one.
ever tried to tell us.
Sorry, that's what I'm used to. My bad.
I'm hoping we'll get an opportunity.
Bill, wasn't you the last couple days leaving
Yeah.
voicemails from me about?
Not voicemails, not yet, Tyler.
It's reflected in the budget.
But yes, it was me who was fishing. Again, I had to play it off, and I just started ignoring people. So.
We do have the codes
But not here.
in the most recent budget.
They're in this, yeah,
Sure,
they're
if
in
you
the
have
Excel
your
workbook.
electric
Is that
version.
right?
So,
And this is the software
Yes,
line item, which went up by,
yes,
almost doubled.
yes it did. This is a small piece of it, but this is new, and also I wanted to unveil that we released the campaign starting yesterday. The next item, this is the big one. This is actually the cause most of the increase, almost doubled it. We are proposing, we've been a 365 shop for almost 7 or 8 years. We're early adopters to the cloud services. One of the main reasons was business continuity, because if our internet went down for a day for whatever reason, we lost email. You know, or if our network had issues, which we had a catastrophic failure several years ago, no email for days, which was a hampering effect at that time. So we moved to the cloud. We had no regrets. When COVID started, we were set up pretty nicely for remote work, collaborative work, especially during our budget season. What we're proposing now, in part of response to the fraud stuff, is an upgrade to Microsoft 365 E5 licensing, they call it. It's enterprise licensing. It's kind of the next level up from where we are. And this package includes anti-everything, anti-malware, anti-phishing, a whole bunch of other policies and software I don't have access to on the current platform. Also gives us additional device security. It's not just our desktops, laptops, but our iPhones, iPads, whatever other devices that we run. This part right here directly goes to our right to know in litigation, advanced e-discovery and auditing. So whenever a request comes in for litigation for email communications, we don't ask people to produce the email. Myself or one of my team members will go into the system and start grabbing everything that's relevant to that particular litigation. And that's what the e-discovery and auditing, so it gives me a lot more tools to pull that stuff out. And then the mobile device management, essentially, like I said, we have 30 iPhones, several iPads. I can track them a little bit, but I want more than tracking. I want to be able to wipe the device, secure all for documents, and do some other stuff that I'm not able to do now. We have way too many devices out there and not enough management and security on them, is my feeling. So this will also include that. And this one right down here, advanced activity logging. Part of when I was working with Secret Service and Adam Group, who was helping us with investigations into the fraud, we got limited on how much time and how much data we had going back, because that fraud happened over several months, and we only had a limited amount of time and access to certain logs. Luckily, Jason is very familiar with forensic science, so he was able to go contact Microsoft, was able to request the other data, but that took some time. So this item will give us this more advanced activity logging, so we can trace back and get better information on investigation. We got hampered by not having the right information, so we got delayed on the investigation.
Do you know what the cost is per year? I mean, this is the initial cost is on the order of $40,000-50,000.
Actually, yeah, we pay currently $27,500 for our current Office email licensing. This upgrade takes it to about $72,000-75,000. So.
And going forward, do we have that same expense, or is it?
It's an annual subscription. Trust me, I went kind of like, really? But it does give, these are just my highlights. It gives us 1,000 other tools. And if you asked me 4 years ago, should we do this? I'd be like, no. But of course, the present climate, everything going on, it's kind of a must, especially, like I said, this part where it did hamper us in our investigations. Yes.
Is this going to require a hardware upgrade, any hardware
No, this
upgrades
is all
or memory
cloud-based.
upgrades?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is all cloud-based.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we might have had a lot more to talk about, except for what happened in the last year. When we talk about this kind of security, we're unlikely to argue much. But you're glad you're finding a better way to proceed.
Did that result in the recovery that we got, or is that an independent
The
FBI?
funds?
Yeah,
That was all Secret Service. That's,
Secret Service, it was
yeah,
theirs,
that-
okay.
We collaborated with Secret Service, gave them the initial logs, but they do their magic behind the scenes. And I did hear we set a trend that they've gotten a whole lot more traction since our case on investigating all these other banks that have been helping the fraudsters. I think Nicole's going to maybe talk about that in the future.
Isn't that nice for them?
Yeah.
Did we get a commission on that?
Commission. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't say silver lining. The gray lining was
Consulting fee?
consulting
Sorry.
between Nicole
Sorry.
and whoever she's talking to. Tyler?
Is
that case closed or still open?
No.
They still tracking?
Yeah, so what I heard, and this is, very, very briefly, was just that they are finding, our case really opened a crack in a door that has led down a hallway with lots of other doors that they've been opening. So they've really been chasing out a bit of a network, a criminal network. It's given them a real interesting insight, and not the least of which has been through the help of Adam Group and, their work, to really help find, where the stuff was coming from and, who was involved in it. It's been really interesting.
It has.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's a gray lining somewhere in here.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it does mean that, they're just gonna find something else. They're gonna find another vector. They've found that municipalities are a particularly lucrative source of income from them, and even if this door gets shut on them, whether it's through, ubiquitous or, widespread software adoption, that sort of thing, different, email standards, whatever it is, they'll find another way. So municipalities are going to continue to be a target.
But that's the nature of crime, right? The criminals set the standards?
Yes.
Pretty much. What was that?
Exactly right, yep.
Will this help us with green mail or black mail, or will it help us with that at all, if they try to shut us down completely?
Oh, ransomware.
Ransomware, yes.
That's a little bit different.
That's a whole different
but
animal.
This platform, like, there's a reason I stick with Microsoft because they're used to being attacked. And seriously, this is what they do. Instead of me and my team, who are not security specialists, we know about security, but that's not the reason we're here. This is what Microsoft does. That's why we kind of stick with them, because they have teams of this stuff, and actually, with the way their reporting works, and actually this platform, it also will give me alerting notifications. Where right now I don't have it. Like, I can't geo-filter to block any logins from Africa. Like, I would have to manually go in and see, is that a legit email? So this is kind of what this will give us, is that geo-filtering, because we have no staff in Africa at the moment. And so.
But in ransomware, they just shut down your whole system.
In ransomware, yes, they encrypt
And
your system.
Is there a way to, is there a firewall for that, or?
Well, nothing's bulletproof, but we do have several layers of security. That's not new. We've always had several layers of security here, including our appliances have some built-in ransomware protections. But again, nothing's bulletproof, and the criminals are always ahead of everybody else.
Does having all this extra fancy stuff, does it, at any point, does Microsoft have any liability in any of this? Or are they just like, oh, here, if you give us double what you're paying us right now, you're still just as vulnerable and we have nothing to do with it? Is that what happens?
I'm not sure about their culpability as far as like our particular case.
At some point, if they're the ones in charge of the whole.
Well, if they were negligent in providing this.
Yeah, if they were, then might be an avenue. Of course, good luck in court.
So Fosh, you have a lot of data on the cloud. Is that correct?
Somewhat.
Is there redundancy?
Yes, and actually, to be truthful, we don't store much data in the cloud. We take responsibility for our own data in-house.
Okay.
The emails in the cloud.
Emails in the cloud, and we have some non-confidential documents in the Microsoft cloud. But we do not keep personnel records up here. We do not keep our budget information or account numbers in here.
So what's your level of redundancy then
For our stuff, we have data appliances here that replicate everything to another site of the police station, and vice versa.
how often?
Continuous.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had that model for about 6-7 years because I told Mr. Bartlett back in the day, hey, if the building burns down, you're not going to see my staff because we're putting resumes out because there's nothing for us to do because there's no data. So we did put that in place about 6-7 years ago where the data is not being backed up over the police station, it's replicated constantly. That way, if the police station goes down or something happens over there catastrophic, we have their data here and vice versa.
Great.
But we don't put anything in the cloud. It's all on us to maintain and keep.
Is there anything that we are we connected in any way to the hospital
No,
systems?
we're not hooked up to the hospital or the school district at all. The EMS services do transmit data when they're en route to CMC or whatever, but there's nothing coming back to us.
The only link that we have, I think, is in the town clerk's office up to the state.
Yeah,
And then the police.
That's a secured. Yeah. So. Another line item that jumped incredibly is our services. This one I think from like $1,000 to like $15,000 or $17,000. So my budget you, Chief. As I mentioned before, part of the investigations we did with Adam Group, who does forensics. And we've been working with Adam Group on very specific items for security. Because honestly, to tell you the truth about the fraud, we had some reports come back in about like some of our technology and security, and there was no gaping hole. I said in the call that I wish there was a gaping hole we could plug, but there wasn't. You know, as they told me anecdotally, like as far as security, you guys are a 4 out of 5, which is pretty darn good in the state of New Hampshire. But again, whenever you have humans, there's always going to be those issues. That's why the cyber awareness training is our biggest and probably best line of defense against the fraud happening like that again. And that's essentially what it comes down to. Because we've been doing security for a number of years. We put layers in, we put all kinds of hardware in. Doesn't matter, you know, if you don't have your people aware of what's going on and all the tactics they change. They literally will change tactics. We don't want people to have the blinders like, oh, don't click on the phishing email. They will show up in your office with a fake ID, pretend to be somebody else. They'll do whatever it takes to get the money, because that's what they do for a living. I know people can't fathom that sometimes, but this is what these people do. So the security consulting, we work with Adam Group, like I said, very specific projects. We work with them on the multi-factor authentication, make sure we're rolling out properly. And we're gonna work with them on, I don't know if you guys have heard, penetration testing. It's pretty standard industry to see where there's holes in your network. Nowadays, they don't do regular pen testing. What you wanna do is kind of stress test what you have in place. So part of the stress testing is your staff. Testing them, make sure they know what to do when they get phishing, how to report it, you know, and so on. And also part of this line item is security appliance subscriptions. This includes our firewall subscriptions, and for blacklisting websites and other kind of more automated things, you know, geofiltering and other stuff like that. So that's what the dramatic increase is in that line item. Yes?
Josh, again, going forward, will we see that number again? I'm sorry.
Honestly, I guess I'll wait to see what happens over the next year or two. You know, if Adam Group and I decide, you know what, Fosh, you're all set. Hit us up next year for review. You know, so it's wait and see for this one. Phil?
So I'd like to step back.
Okay.
I see your software line has doubled.
Yes.
Is that all due to security efforts on our part?
The biggest increase for the software is the Microsoft going from $28,000 a year to $75,000 a year.
So about $50,000.
Yeah. And again, I was not up for that, but it was the best move after doing research, talked to Adam Group and a few other people. It gave us all the tools we needed without going to third-party products, which we did also look at. They did like niche things like filtered email. We want more than just filtered email. Any questions on security services? Again, we'll see if we are able to cut it out. That's my last slide. Our goals for fiscal year 23, pretty simple. Formalized cyber awareness program and verification. Again, the platform verifies, does our annual assessment. It's none of this, oh, can you sign that form? Make sure you watch the video. It's active, training them all the time. And also anti-phishing enhancements. When we did the initial training in the fall, we benchmarked our email filtering rate at 65%. Our goal for, I think I said it for June of 2023 is to have 90% filtering. And these two items are metrics. We can measure them. That's why I threw them in as our goals. That's it.
Thank you, Rush. I think very important discussion to be having right now.
Yeah. Any other questions on items?
That's it. Any questions? Any more information?
Anybody want to go on the record and argue about security upgrades?
So Fosh, when are you going to implement the two-factor verification?
We've already implemented most of the directives.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we already did the first rollout, high value targets.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to be clear, we're not using it fully on the internal network. It's mostly on the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't talked about second phase because there is a cost to some of the hardware we buy, but yeah, first phase is done. We're going to work on the next phase and see who else should be given the multi-factor authentication tools.
All right, before we conclude, I would like to mention that in the documents that were sent to us, we had at least 5 things that came from the head of our finance division, Lily. There were things that we basically asked for and discussed earlier, and she provided the detail. We have the fuel tracker. Remember, we talked about how the fuel is being distributed among divisions. We have the 2 revised budgets, of course, that we've been using tonight. We had electricity reported to us by department. Again, another thing we asked for, and some staff figures. So I just want to comment that she's been very responsive, and I think very clear in those reports. Of course, when I sat down today, she gave me some more things to thank her for next time. I believe we might be ready then to take a look at the minutes that we received from the 4th, which is a little ways back, but I have a couple of comments. Since I have the floor at the moment, let me just ask, I may be reading it wrong, but it looks on page 8 as if the first line doesn't make sense to me. It says capital reserve and expendable trust funds will no longer be budgeted for to expend or included as offsetting revenue. I'm not sure what that line means.
That's right, yeah, because those are no longer included as offsetting revenue, so we won't be including them as a note in the department budgets as we had done in the past.
I'm sorry, I just don't get the grammar. What does it mean? Those two kinds of trust funds, which I believe are all kinds of trust funds, will no longer be budgeted for to expend or included as offsetting revenue. So what we mean is that trust funds will no longer be included in the budget. Their expenditures or their offsetting revenue have to be included in the budget. Is that what that means?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Are there any other comments on the minutes?
I had one minor change to it. I know that Carol had asked who was on, I think you asked this, who was on the EDA. So there was a list of names related to the EDA. I just want to bring everybody up to date on that. Jamie Conley is no longer, he's resigned from the EDA. Nick Zotto had resigned quite a while ago, actually. And we've just added Paul LaRoche to the list. So I don't know if we want to modify the minutes to reflect those changes or...
I'll suggest specific rewording perhaps for that sentence, if we're all agreeing on what it means. I have a couple of typos to mention, but is there any other comments on the minute?
I think the version of the minutes changed. I saw a previous version of the minutes, and on page 10, paragraph 3, line 3, I think the word fund should be changed to fund with a D at the end. There was a typo.
Would you tell me the location of that one more time? You said it was paragraph.
Can I just ask?
Page 10, paragraph 3, line 3.
If you have just little typos that you find, or little changes in like punctuation or something, you can email those to Ally when you see them. That way we're not spending a lot of time in the meeting just doing things. I mean, if it's something that changes the meaning, that's a bit different, but, if it's just a little grab like that, just send them to Ally.
Seeing no further questions, I'd like a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Seconded. Of course, we're, the select board and the budget committee are all voting on whether, because this is a joint meeting here, so all those in favor indicate by raising your hands.
Unanimous.
Thank you. We have a motion to close the meeting.
Just a quick follow-up.
Yes.
Lily ran back and did the math, and Julie's salary makes up 18% of the total salary line.
Thank you.
That's a discreet way of saying it. We have a motion to close the meeting. Thank you. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.